All right, so the second lick in this little jam is it's actually it's funny because most of the times when I see these videos and I go, oh man, I want to transcribe that, it's a certain lick that draws me in, and this was that lick in this video, which mostly I like those chromatic-y kind of jazzy things, which this kind of falls under that category. But then as I started transcribing the whole thing, I realized that that first lick was the part of the video that I liked the most, where he was bending and subtly doing all those little things. So it's just, it's funny when you start transcribing this stuff, you find other things that interest you more than what initially drew you in. So anyway, this this lick starts out, it's all... all 16th note based, and that's kind of key to this, the beginning of this phrase, because you could easily do, where this all becomes kind of a blur of notes, but it's very much, and that's when I actually learned it. That's how I practiced it. I practiced with the metronome. The first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first 5 notes are only the first one is picked. But that's the trick of, if you're picking them, it's very easy to get them in time. But when you're pulling them off, you kind of want to just let them all go. So the trick is to try and... So... Anyway, so those notes are 17, 16, 15, 13, 12 on the E string. And if you look at that pattern, it's basically your D minor arpeggio. If you, I mean, it's actually D minor scale with one note added, which again is that which is a flat 5. And if you're not familiar with these scales and everything, you can be pretty it's actually the second mode, the second scale based out of a C major. So all the notes are natural. So you have an A, a G, an F to an E, and the only other note that's thrown in between there is a flat, which is your flat 5. So that whole beginning, after he slides down all those 5 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, he goes to the 15th fret of the E string, to the 13th fret of the E string, down to the 15th fret of the D string, I'm sorry, the 15th fret of the B string, 12th fret of the E string, and 14th fret of the B string. So that's where that chromatic-y walk down kind of goes. So he's just doing this pattern down a half step. And then he slides up from the 14th fret of the B string to the 15th fret. So then he slides down from the 14, 13, 12 of the G string. So it's... And then after he gets to that 12th fret, he goes to the 13th fret of the B string, to the 10th fret of the G string, to the 10th fret of the B string. So you have... And then he skips down to the D string, 12, 11, 12, and he pulls those off. Well, pulls off and hammers on. So, I'm sorry. And here he goes to the 10th fret, to the 10th, to the 9th, to the 7, back to the 9 on the G string. But when he goes down to that 7, he slides back up really quickly to that 9th fret. So it's... so it's a quick slide from 9, 7, back to 9. Then he hammers on the 10th fret, and he slides down with the 2nd finger to the 7th fret of the G string. So that whole thing is... and if you... Again, if you have a hard time visualizing what's going on, if that just seems like a bunch of notes, start thinking of the patterns. Like, I look at it like this is the D minor pentatonic scale, or D minor arpeggio. So that's where I see that phrase. Then I see him doing this phrase, which is the same thing, walking down a half step. Then he goes up a half step, goes down 3 notes. Now he's right in that pentatonic scale. So he walked down to this note, and there's that pentatonic scale. And again, throwing in that major 7. The root to the major 7 back here. And then those are just the notes. So when I see this, I see those pentatonic scales and I see the arpeggios. That's just what makes it easier for me. Otherwise, it'd just be a bunch of notes, and you're kind of going, you know, you're saying, man, there's just too many notes. All right, so the last part, right after the after he slides down to that the D note on the G string, he does this again. This is where those little... This part was the hardest part for me to play because he's doing so much within 4 or 5 notes that I was having a problem doing this. He basically... Again, if you're looking at that pentatonic scale, it's what he did on that first lick, where it's the 3rd fret, 5th fret of the D string, and then the 6th fret of the D string, where that's the 2nd, I'm sorry, that's the 3rd, the minor 3rd, the 4th, the flat 5, back down to the root. Which is, you know, typical bluesy kind of thing. But the way he phrases this, he slides quickly into, from maybe the 7th or 8th fret somewhere, but he slides into the 5th fret of the D string, but then he quickly slides back up to the 6th fret, back down to the 7th fret. I'm sorry, up to the 6th fret, back down to the 5th fret. So it's... And then he adds vibrato to that. But it's... You barely hear it. I mean, it's... And he bends up. While he's bending up a little bit. You know, instead of just vibrato, he's bending up a little too. So it's... And then he plays the... He hammers on the 6th fret with the pinky, or I think he uses 3rd finger. He does a lot of 1, 2, and 3 fingers instead of the pinky. But the 6th fret to 5th fret to the 3rd fret of the D string he pulls off. So it's... I'm sorry. And then and when he gets to that 3rd fret, he bends up a whole step. So it's... And I have a hard time with that, especially with my first finger way down here, bending up a whole step. That's pretty crazy. So, then he goes down to the 5th fret of the A string, rolls onto the 5th fret of the D string, back down to the 3rd fret of the D string. So. Then he quickly slides up from the 5th fret to the 7th fret of the D string, which is the 5th of the chord. So it's... And once he hits that 7th fret, again, he quickly bends up, and this time he bends up a step and a half to the minor 7, which is in your pentatonic scale. It's that note. So it's... And then again, when he bends down, he slides down all the way to the end of the fretboard. So again, I know that was a lot of talky on very few notes, but I hope you enjoy the subtleties the way I do. Anyway, let's move on to the next lick.